So take it away, Michael.
So welcome back, everybody. It's been quite a while. It's been interesting. I'm not one that calls our current state of affairs the new normal. I just think it's where we are now, and I'm hoping that we get back to something else somewheres down the road, but we'll see how that all goes. I talked to Jeff Yates today about where we are, what we're doing, and what TU National's message is. And basically, it's the same message that they gave us over the summer. We can do small group things, although we don't really have anything planned right now, as long as there are masks involved and with social distancing. Certainly what we do, there's no pressure for anybody to come who feels that they're in a compromised state or just doesn't have a comfort level with what's going on in our current society, however you want to call it. Back on June 30th, CVTU lost a very important, wonderful, great member in Jerry Reckhart. I put something up back when it happened and tried to explain my relationship with Jerry and what he meant to the chapter, but it was brought up by one of our members that we thought it would be nice if we did a moment of silence in Jerry's honor. So we can do that right now. Jerry will be missed, is missed, and was a huge part of the chapter. If you guys want, anybody who doesn't know or didn't know Jerry very well, speak with Joe Hovius, Bill, or Doug, and they can share their stories about Jerry. With that, I'm going to kick it over to Neil. Temperature monitoring update.
Hey, folks. Good evening. Just wanted to give a quick update on our temperature monitoring. As you may know or may not know, we've been collecting data for about, 14 years. For me, the last 5 years have been the most interesting because of such low water conditions. We usually put them in late May, early June this year because of the COVID. We pull them out, early October. When I pulled them out over the weekend, maybe you guys know, but the Putatuck is flowing very low. When I went up Deep Brook and Meeker Brook, or Oil Creek, as some people may know it as, it was barely flowing. I think the Putatuck was flowing about 4 CFS.
Wow.
And when we put them in the springtime, early June, it was right around 20. And if I look at some of the water, if I look at the water flow, I think we're getting an echo here. You guys hear that?
Yeah.
Okay. If I look at the water pattern from last year, it's very similar. So pray for rain. I know we're supposed to get almost 1.5 inches the next couple days. I think Friday, Saturday. So just keep praying for rain. I'll send the thermograph data to the state, and I'll get the data probably first part of the year, right around February. So I'm just pulling together 2018, 19, and 20 to look at what that pattern is. This year we put back at the ag fields, or not the ag fields, the well fields over where Aquarian did all the work across from Stop and Shop. So we'll have 2 years of data there. Also, we put one in right at Wassemer's Way to give us some information regarding Curtis Pond Brook, which is the brook that flows right around back of Walsh's property. And that's where they're going to put in that, restaurant, convenience centers, and so on. So we wanted to kind of get some information on thermal spikes coming off the impervious surface. So I guess just some other real quick highlights on conservation. mainly we didn't really do much this year, but invasive species. We basically trimmed our plantings over at Pratt, over at the well fields, across from Stop and Shop, and where we did all the root bod work in 2019. And all those trees look really healthy. And I encourage you to go down and see the work we did, because the scouring boulders they put in really work, because the pools are really deep in those couple areas. So, you know, we got to keep doing our conservation work, and hopefully soon we'll be able to get out and do some conifer revetment work, because Joe and I walked Deep Brook, and there's quite a lot of spots that we need to do work on. So that's all I have.
And Neil, can I ask you one quick question?
Yeah.
Were any of the monitors dry?
No, I was really surprised. They were all underwater. I mean, because when we put them in, remember, we put them in, I think the water was right around 20.
Yeah.
Which was a low condition anyway. So we looked for all the real deep spots. And yeah, I was surprised.
That's great news.
Yep.
That's great
Yep.
news.
Yep.
All right. So I don't know if everybody remembers, but our banquet was supposed to be this coming Saturday.
Yep.
October 17th. We have gotten in touch with Michaels, and we have a couple of dates on the calendar for March. I think it's the 2nd and the 3rd Saturday. So, you know, man, I should have put a quick poll up to see which date you want, and then we can call and firm it up. But it would be March of next year. Hopefully by then we'll be able to have I'll call it a less social distanced gathering, but we'll see. It's not that far away, believe it or not. So you'll start to hear me talking more about, you know, sort of re-inventorying what we have, and asking for additional donations. Some of the donations that we got expired. You know, there were gift certificates that expired either at the end of the year or the end of the summer or something like that. I think all of the people who were responsible for those gift certificates were like, you know, assured me that we would be able to get them again. The other thing, Beth, and this is for you, but also for everybody else who paid, we've only refunded one ticket, or 2 tickets, I guess.
2 or 3.
So 3?
I believe it was 2 or 3.
Okay, so but we still have, you know, more than a dozen people that are still paid in full. So more about that coming hopefully in the next, you know, month.
Mark,
as we firm up and we get a better idea as to what the future holds for this pandemic. Yeah, Dave.
yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, does it make more sense to plan it for May, maybe, which seems maybe it's more realistic than March?
You know, that's something we can think about. I'm sure that Michael's is not booked. I got the impression that they're wide open, because pretty much, you know, I keep tabs on this on the hospitality industry in general, and nobody's booking groups right now, not big or small.
Yeah.
You know, there are very, very few, and they're really kind of weird if you start to look at how they're gathering. You know, they're putting 100 people in a room that they would normally put, you know, 500-600. So it's a strange thing we're dealing with. Right. But that's the bank. What's
Something
that?
to think about. I know
Yeah.
David's suggestion is something that is wedding season though, but we'll see. You know, I'm sure they'll be happy to have us whenever we can get in there.
Yeah.
And Mark, just before you move on, I did want to mention one thing since we're talking about the banquet. I just want everyone to understand that the chapter is in pretty solid financially. We haven't really spent any money this year, but we've been solid up to that. And I also wanted to just let you guys know that because there hasn't been meetings and because there hasn't been raffles and no banquet, we did get 3 very generous donations from people to support the chapter through this COVID time. They don't want anyone to know who they are. The only one who knows who they are myself and Beth. But there are people who deeply care about this chapter and showed it through some financial backing. So I just wanted to bring that up. Go ahead, Mark.
Yes, kudos to those people.
Yes.
Yeah. So just a quick update on COVID. That these are bullet points essentially I gathered from the TU website. basically TU is, we and as a chapter and many chapters are continuing to shove our traditional activities. Obviously, we're not having indoor chapter meetings, our fundraising banquets rescheduled, our social get-togethers, things like barflies and barbecues and other things have been called off. And really, I don't see those things resurfacing for a while anyway. TU does allow in-person activities, but asks the chapters follow local regulations. So obviously, we're tied to whatever the regulations are for Connecticut, and certainly since we're so close to New York and we tend to go across borders, we have to understand their regulations as well. Social distance fishing trips are allowed, the Salmon River trip being one. And then, obviously it's just use common sense and obey all local state regulations. I think as a chapter, we have to be cognizant of that as we go out and do things under the banner of CVTU, right? So pretty simple stuff. I mentioned before everyone joined the call that it wasn't easy to find this information on TU's website. So I'm gonna maybe send a note to Jeff and just let him know I had a hard time finding sort of concrete TU statement on COVID. And I know they did that through email and other Facebook posts and things like that, through other mediums, but I couldn't find it on the website. And the website, by the way, if you haven't been on it lately, it has undergone some pretty considerable modifications, especially the leadership pages. So that's that.
Mark, one quick thing to let you guys know. Unfortunately, one of the casualties of COVID was our Barflies meeting place. The meeting house is closed. They did not make it.
Well, so they won't come back, but I am happy to report that there's a sign up that a new institution will be opening there in the at some point in the future.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that, Paul.
Yeah.
That's good information. That's great information, actually.
Yeah.
We'll have to go have a pint and get set up for Barflies when they let us. Good.
That's a shame. That was a good place.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
Local family that they just couldn't keep it going.
Yeah, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
If I could just do a real quick update on RBV, macroinvertebrate testing.
Okay.
And it's tied into COVID. So Megan Lally from Deep sent out an email actually today, and she was discouraging the volunteers from sampling. She wasn't forbidding it, said there should be no more than 2 or 3 people, social distancing, masks, no training going on. And, I was not intending on doing any sampling other than in Deep Brook. And so I want to ask Neil the question if you were just there. But my daughter helped me last year, so I was actually thinking this weekend I would go sample Deep Brook to see what might have survived there. But is there enough water to even bother? Otherwise, I can try waiting a couple of weeks or so.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to get an inch of rain on Friday. You get a lot of runoff maybe Saturday. I mean, there's not a lot of water there. I'll just say that.
All right.
It's probably 1/3 the width of it normally is.
Wow. Which is not real wide to begin with. So
yeah, I know it is. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so I wanted to give a membership update simply because I think, given that we haven't met since March of 12th of this year, it's interesting that our membership continues to improve. We have 213 active members now. That doesn't include lapsed members who may re-up in the next couple of months or whatever. But I can tell you this: it's the highest number of members since I've been tracking it since in December 18. In fact, I went to one of the council meetings in early 19, and that was when Alicia was still the council chair, and she did a whole membership thing. And at that point in time, I think we were somewhere south of we're south of 190, I think. So we're over 10% since then, and that's positive again, since we really haven't done anything, I don't think, to go out and recruit. There have been some things that TU National has done, but that to me is a positive number. I have a little tickler. I have a task that pops up on my screen every month and says check membership. And so this is what I found out when I checked it actually today. New members, we've had 12 since the beginning of July. And this is something I think is really indicative of CVTU, at least from my short time with the chapter. And that is we have 37 lifetime members in our chapter. That's that's 17.4% of our active members are lifetime members. And it kind of shows the commitment that we have to TU and just, I think we're one of the strongest chapters, at least that I've come in contact with at the rendezvous I've been to. So I think that's something we can all be proud of. And these membership numbers are something that we can all be proud of.
And there'll be 38 after the next meeting.
There you go.
Since this is kind of like a intimate meeting here, I was just thinking, we haven't been doing too much because of the whole situation, but maybe we should do like the virtual fly tying that we kind of had informally, like among some of us over, the spring and early summer, just to kind of like get people in talking, and we can do it, every 2 weeks or something like that, or just something like in between the meetings. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea coming, especially since we're now at October 14th and it's going to start getting cold.
Yeah.
And, the trips to the river are going to be few and far between probably in another month. So
I mean, if you wanted to, we could start with like a steelhead one that, I could do and John could help, and just like steelhead flies are so easy anyway, but,
Yeah, even I could tie them.
even Mike could tie it kind of.
If you remember,
Big
it was
trick is, can I tie
about
one?
1 year ago, we were at the Reverie tying steelhead flies.
Yeah, so maybe in the next week or two, we could, if you want to set that up, I'm happy to lead it.
Cool, good idea.
Excellent. Thank you, David.
All right, so now we're going to get into the meat of this, when we're all going to share our fun little summer of COVID stories. And first up, well, actually, I got to go to the masks. I forgot about this one. So Mike has ordered masks and neck gaiters with our logo on them. Masks, as he said, will be handed out free at our next in-person event. But neck gaiters are available for $6 a piece. Contact him if you want to order a neck gaiter. I was actually, funny story, I was walking out of Stu Leonard's wine store with a 6-pack or a case or whatever of Fat Tire beer. And in coming toward me is the representative for Fat Tire. And so she saw that I had Fat Tire and she goes, "Hey, you like that beer? That's really good beer." I'm like, "Yeah, I really do." She goes, "I work for Fat Tire." She goes, "How would you like a Fat Tire gator?" So
Yeah.
I have a gator that says Fat Tire on it.
Very nice.
It doesn't say spare tire?
Well, Gator, the Fat Tire helps to build your spare tire.
That's right. That's right. Okay. So now,
I just
One more thing,
Mark,
Mark. One more thing on the
I didn't need that.
gators. I ordered 25 gators that are going to be available for sale. So again, as he said, just contact me if you want one. And what we're going to do with the masks is they're not disposable masks. So when we finally are able to get together, everyone's going to get one. And if you want to purchase one as an additional, or if you like them so much you want an extra one, there will be some for purchase because we ordered enough to have more. So, okay.
So Mike, we just email you with our orders.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
want us to mail you a check for it? Or how you want
We'll worry about that when we worry about it. I'll just cover it
Yeah.
for now and we'll figure it out.
Okay.
Let's
Hey,
see
I-
how many people actually want their individuals, and then we can figure out the best way to handle it. You and I.
Okay.
all right. So,
I just had a thought here, Mike.
Not
Rather than
thinking,
everyone
John.
email you,
Yep.
it's just gonna. Why don't, if you want one right now, just put how many you want in the chat, and then I'll keep track of it, and then I'll email you a list, Mike.
That sounds great. If anybody wants to do that, just let John know how many you want. I'll start with
Open-
one.
So open the chat. You see in the bottom controls is a chat. If you click that, you can just type something in the MS. Just type how many you want.
Is that Emery there? All the way from New Jersey.
Hi, Dave. How are you?
Hey.
Hey, guys. Everyone.
Hey, Emery.
Oh, going fast. I like it.
okay,
Hey,
Mike,
Hey, Mike, have we thought about any outdoor venues for possibly the fundraiser or even a meeting, an outdoor venue?
Honestly, Steve, we haven't, but it's something that we can talk about at our next board meeting, which will be
Yeah, 'cause,
which will be the 22nd.
okay,
If you could attend, that would be good. We can have the conversation then.
I'll try.
All right, very good.
Hey,
So
it's you, Mike.
I guess I'm up. So, you know, as you can see, I've been, how do I put this? I've been trying to find humor in as much of this as I can. I know it's a very serious thing. I'm not saying it's not, but for sanity's sake, you got to kind of look at it from a bunch of different ways. So as a lot of you know, I'm a big Grateful Dead fan. So I happen to find that online, and I thought it would be a great way to open up my COVID steal your streak. So Mark, next slide, please. So, you know, as you can see by my headline, anything but normal. And no, oh, hi, Amory. Anything but normal is the way this whole thing has been. And during this time, no sports on TV. I wasn't able to visit my clients. I couldn't go to church on Sunday. We had no CVTU stuff, no social gatherings, no trips to the bar. I started to go a little stir crazy, to be quite honest. I mean, I love my wife, I love my son, but it was just the three of us here in the house, all running businesses out of the house, by the way. So I tied a bunch of flies, probably more flies than I've tied in years, to just try to find a way to, you know, fill my time. And by filling my time with tying flies, I needed to go fishing. So next slide, Mark. So also, because I was spending a lot of time trying to find work, which I wasn't very successful at. Many days I was sitting in front of an empty computer screen by 11:30, having huge lunches, waiting desperately for my son to get done with work by 4 o'clock so we could have a beer. And I started to find out that I was putting on too much weight, wasting too much time, and needed to make some changes. So I actually downloaded an app called Noom. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of it or not, but I downloaded the Noom app. I started with a 1,500 calorie diet, and I had my bicycle tuned up, which I hadn't ridden in probably 12 to maybe 15 years. I hadn't ridden my mountain bike. I brought it in, I had it tuned up, I started riding it, and for the months of March, April, May, and June, I was riding twice a week. And by the time I got done at the end, when I finished up in June, because I took July and August off, I was riding approximately 20 miles a day in about an hour and 10 minutes. So never would have happened without COVID. And that's the only reason that I'm bringing it up. It never would have happened without COVID because I wouldn't have had the time. So I just was trying to find ways to fill this huge void of time and huge void of not being able to see people and do things. Next slide. So also during COVID, because I'm 60, I was able to shop at Costco during the senior hours. So as you can see, that was the back of my car. I probably did that 3 or 4 times. Literally went there at 6:30 in the morning, sat in the car playing on my phone. And as soon as I saw the first person get out of the car, I would sprint up and try to be second or third in line to make sure that I got the wipes and the Bounty and the toilet paper and all the stuff that you had to have.
You're knocking old ladies over to get it.
No, I didn't knock over any old ladies, but I will tell you, I did see some things, Beth, that really were disturbing.
I bet you
Like
did.
people
I bet you did.
who were hoarding things, who were, buying those Clorox things that you see there. One lady, she had 10 of them. And I was like, you should really leave some for somebody else. And then I was like, you know what, never mind. Buy as many as you want. And I just kept going. So I got in and I got out. But it wasn't enough. So that's when my streak started. And the streak was 30 consecutive days of trout fishing with at least one fish brought to hand, one trout brought to hand. I caught other fish during the streak, but at least one trout brought to hand. And it didn't start out as a streak. It just started out as like I had time, I was fishing. And then I was going out the door one day and I looked at my son and I said, this is the 7th day in a row that I'm going trout fishing. And I kind of said it to make him feel a little jealous, but he didn't go for it. But he said, you should keep it going as long as you can. So next slide, Mark. So I did keep it going. And I posted on Instagram in the beginning, a picture here, a picture there. And people that I didn't even know were like, wow, that's great. You should keep going. Go as long as you can. Or I wish I had time to do a streak, or I wish I could do that, or, you know, good luck with this. So I just kept going and going. And my family bought into it. And I had, actually, Cheryl was not working as much because she couldn't do her in-person stuff with her yoga people and her Reiki people. So she actually fished with me a few times this spring. That's a picture of us on the Farmington River back in sometime in the middle of May, I guess it was. So on day 22, I was ready to let it go because it was a cold, rainy day. I had been busy with work that day. So I just was like, I'm not going to do it. And they both said to me, no, you have to do it. Just go over to the club, catch your trout, and come back for dinner. So I went to the club and one cast, one trout, and I was back home in 10 minutes. So I kept it going. That was the only day that I really thought about letting it go. So as you can see from the slide there, I fished all over the place during the streak. Sometimes I traveled far. Sometimes I went to the club, which is 3 minutes from my door. I always kept my rods in the car. I actually would, if I was driving somewhere and I saw something that looked like it might have a fish in it, I stopped to fish because, again, I had lots of time. So I fished in the Farmington, the Hoosier, Putatuck, Pequannock, the Halfway River, which is the one that runs through my club, the Chippewa, the Little River in Oxford, which, by the way, if nobody's fished there, is a really nice little trout stream. There's native brook trout and there's wild brown trout in there. Plus they do supplemental stocking. I fished the mill and some little blue lines that I'll show you, but I'll have to blindfold you to take you there because they're really precious little gems. And I also went to New York, the Croton, the Cross. I was up in the Salmon River for a weekend with my son, and then the Titticus River, which a friend of mine has some property on. Some days I fished for hours. Some days I fished for minutes. And there were some days that I had like Randy Walker type of days where I caught over 20 fish, lost count, and other days where I literally had to fish really hard just to catch one fish to keep the streak going. And that collage, all of those fish right there were caught at some point during the streak. There's no real order to them. It's just fish that I caught. Next slide, Mark. So at the end of the streak, or close to the end of the streak, my uncle passed away. And he was my uncle that got me involved with trout fishing. He took me camping for the first time. He was like my outdoors really cool uncle. So the first time he took me trout fishing, believe it or not, was right here in Newtown, was to the Putatuck River. And on day 30 of the streak, I decided to go to the Putatuck, 1, because it was close to home, 2, because I didn't have a lot of time, and 3, because it was the first place that my uncle took me trout fishing. So I was at the, I don't know if you guys know, the pool at the bottom of the, so if you go in where the kiosk is, you walk the path down, Deep Brook is on your right, and there's the big pool with the big, huge curve, and then there's the tree that comes out across. So as I got there, I Euro nymphed a couple fish up, and then there was one more fish that was just sitting there rising right by the end of the tree, and it would come up, grab a fly, and go down. And I tried everything that I could to try to get a cast over the top, and I just couldn't do it. So I stopped, I took a break, I kind of looked skyward and like asked for my uncle's help a little bit, and literally the very next cast that I put over the top of him, perfect drift. He came up, he sipped it, boom, I got him. And that's Mark's got it. Cast, drift, sip, set, fight, land, picture. That's the brown trout that I caught, and we'll call that Uncle Tom's trout.
Nice.
And I think that might be my last slide.
No, we got one more.
No, one more. So 30 days in a row. That's what I did. I stopped it at 30 because, one, it was getting to the point where it was not that it wasn't fun. It's always fun to go trout fishing, but I kind of had to figure out like when I was going to go, how I was going to keep it going. And I knew that there was no way I was going to keep it going for 60 days. And I figured stopping at any point between 30 and 60 wasn't going to make any sense to me. So I stopped it at 30. It was a great distraction for what was going on at the time. It gave me time to pause and think about what needed to be done. It gave me time to think about what was going on around me. And it was a ton of fun to do. So I don't know if I'll ever do it again. I'd like the opportunity to do it again. And if anybody has the opportunity, and to say that I was able to do it while I was working, even though I wasn't too busy, was quite an accomplishment for me too. So that's the story of my COVID streak.
Great.
Cool.
Any questions for Mike before we go on to Kirsten?
That was a great report.
I
Awesome.
thank you.
What was your most productive fly, Mikey?
Oh boy. Most productive fly, I would say, was probably, well, it depends. If I was Euro nymphing, it was definitely a pheasant tail. I did some streamer fishing with I tied up a bunch of small, what I call jiggy buggers, which is basically a woolly bugger on a size 8 jig hook with a bead. That was also really good in the spring. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. There was really, there might've been one or two. The only fish that I caught dry fly might've been that last one at the end. But a lot of my fish were caught Euro nymphing. So mostly pheasant tails probably was the fly of the streak, if I had to pick one.
Good.
Okay, Kirsten, you're up.
All righty. Well, I probably did the opposite of what Mike did, was that I felt like I didn't really want to go far from home. And I kept hearing stories of like the Housatonic being full of fishermen, and it didn't really strike me that I want to go fishing to get away from people. I don't want to go up and like get stressed out because there's loads of people. So I forget when it was. You can go to the next slide actually, Mark. I forget when it was. Somebody probably knows, March or April. Jeff Yates did a seminar on fishing for native brook trout. And so I listened to that, and that's actually him standing in the Norwalk River right after they did I always think he's like a fly fishing Jesus there or something. So the three things he said was you need to find rivers that have some gradient, some shade, and are kind of remote. The more remote, the better. And that'll give you the clean, cold water that the brook trout need. So I was a little intimidated, but I do love looking at maps, which Bob will tell you drives him crazy. Give me a map and I'll be happy for like 2 hours. So I looked up lots of maps and resources that I have, and I found a nice little brook. If you go to the next slide.
Oh, beautiful.
A nice little brook in Ridgefield. This is actually probably April. So this is deep water, and I love exploring rivers. I used to do it as a kid before I even fished. Like I could spend all day walking up and down a river. So I was kind of happy once I hacked through the briars to just explore the river. And I kind of learned really quickly that your first cast, you're going to get a bite. And if you're not ready, then you might just have like wrecked that pool. So the first fish I caught out of this brook was this brookie on the right. The bottom of my net is 12 inches across.
Wow.
That's a nice fish.
That's a beautiful fish.
That was the biggest one I caught. I did see in another pool, I saw a massive tail, and I'll tell you about the story of the pool. I saw a really big tail and I went back a couple of times to catch it. So I think there was actually a bigger one. I'm sort of intrigued to know how old a brook trout like this might be, because this river or brook is really small. And if you go to the next slide, Mark, this was a pool. These photos all these photos were taken after Storm Isaias, or however it's pronounced. The one on the left, this pool was the pool I saw the bigger fish in. And all the debris you see in the middle photo used to be stacked on top of this rock ledge on the right-hand side. And you actually sort of took your life in your hands. You had to climb up on top of this wood pile to fish upstream. And I went back once in the summer to like take the water temperature and see what was going on. And then I went in after Isaias, and the whole log jam got blown out by the storm. That's it, literally like 20 yards downstream. And so this pool dropped about 12 inches or 18 inches. And in fact, you can't really see it that well, but there's a vertical log on the right-hand side of the left-hand picture, and there's a dark line on it. You can kind of see where the water line used to be. Go to the right, Mark. No, this left-hand photo. Left-hand photo. On the edge of the greenery on the right-hand side. Never mind. The left-hand, the other left. There we go.
First one.
Oh, that one?
Greenery on the right-hand side.
Oh, okay.
Halfway down, there's a log sticking, like a vertical.
Oh, that one right there.
So there's the dark bottom on that kind of shows you where the water level used to be.
Oh, wow.
So the pool had a bit of silt in it, and it had some depth, and there was a beautiful little channel coming through some rocks. But after the storm, I don't think there was anything in there. The water was really, really low. So I have a question well, there's two questions. In a river, in a stream that's this like stepped, how do the fish move through the river? And the second question is, when a massive storm comes through, because obviously the gradient means that you're going to have a real kind of flash flood event, where do the fish go? Like, did the fish in this pool get washed further downstream, or what happens to them?
I'll take a stab for you, Kirsten. Trout can move up and down a river as long as there's enough flow. It doesn't even have to cover their back. They just have to be able to swim through it. The club that I have here, I have seen fish go, they vault over a 2-foot dam like it's nobody's business to keep to move between pool to pool. And when there's a big flood like that, sometimes, and this is how brookies survive in ridiculously low water, they almost go underground. In other words, they'll go underneath an undercut bank or underneath a large rock that has cold water underneath it, and they'll just sit there until they can come out and find food and or until the water level comes up some. So it's amazing how they can hide and what they can do to survive. I mean, they've been surviving for millions of years, not necessarily, maybe in this river, I don't know, but so the answer is they can move all over the place and will move to make sure that they survive. I don't know if anybody else has anything they want, John or
Yeah,
Dave, anybody want to add to that?
I posed that question to Jeff Yates once about the aquatic insects. How come they don't get washed away? And he said they hunker down under rocks and all sorts of nooks and crannies. You know, the trout must do the same.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice book, so I'd like to go back and fish.
And exactly where is it? I'm kidding.
What's the GPS?
Well, I remember, Mike, you and I and Bob had a deal that you would show us how to nymph.
Yes.
And I would show, this was the stream I was going to show you. And
well,
then
my deal still stands.
Life got in the way. Bob had his other knee replaced.
She just has to blindfold you on her way there.
I'll pull my Trout Unlimited gator up over my head. So and then you can just walk me there.
Yeah, and I got laid off, so I can go fishing any day now. So.
Oh, I'll talk to you after the meeting's over. We'll set that up then.
All right.
I'm sorry to hear that you got laid off, but we'll set that up.
Yeah, it's a bummer. So with this other stream sort of not really conducive to fishing, I decided to just go off and explore in the woods, any little stream that I thought had gradient and shade. This is, the two photos on the left are Tannery Brook. This is a tributary of the Saugatuck. I actually walked the Saugatuck too. Like I like the fact that when the river was low, you could just get in it and walk the riverbed and do a little bit of intel for where the pools might be later on when the water comes back. So this runs into the Saugatuck just north of John Reed Middle School. Halfway up, actually off another tributary that doesn't even have a name, there's this massive waterfall, and that was bone dry. That's the middle photo. There was a tiny little pool of water just in the rocks, and there was some little fish in there, 3 or 4 inches long. But again, like, do all the fish go downstream when the water drops like this? Like, where do they go? There was loads of dead crayfish in the riverbed.
They're probably in the belly of a heron.
Yeah. And then the photo on the right is actually the Putatuck. So I did the invasive trail maintenance with Neil and had never gone down and looked at the remediation work that the club did last year. So the next day I went back and I just walked the riverbed. And it was interesting because that pool next to the Deep Brook junction, it doesn't look that deep. This was, Neil, I forget what day this was. It was like mid-August or something, or mid-September.
No, it was August, early August. Yeah.
So I walked in, I had my waders on, I walked in, and even though the pool only looked knee deep, it was actually waist deep. So, and people had said that they'd seen trout in it. I didn't see any. So I walked the riverbed, most occasionally probably places that I had to get out where there's a deeper pool. But I walked all the way up to the wire at the Putatuck Club, just checking things out. But it's so low. Like, I did see the second remediation place. I did see a fish in there, very skittish. But that was kind of fun, just like walking up the rivers. Not so fun to see like the drought kind of conditions. What's the next slide, Mark? I think it's my last one.
Yeah.
So here's my PSA. When I did the invasive species thing, we didn't actually find any mile-a-minute, but when I walked the riverbed, there were 2 spots where it was just spilling out into the river. And of course, if the berries get in, each of these little berries that you see has a seed in it, and if the seed gets into the river, then the river is going to distribute the plant all over the place.
Kirsten, was that on the Putatuck or was that on Tannery Brook?
Yeah, that was on the Putatuck. So
Wow.
the first 2, well, all these photos, there was a really massive patch, really close to the more upstream remediation spot. And I had actually never seen it before. And I took these photos so I could identify it. So the 3 things that I don't know if guys know, the 3 things that you always look for. One is that the leaf is almost an equilateral triangle. 2 is that wherever a stem comes out, they have these little circular whorls. And the photo on the right, the stems are barbed, and that's actually how it uses them a lot to grow. And mile-a-minute vine can grow up to 6 inches a day. I did report this to the Newtown Conservation Commission because both patches were too big for me to just go and pull them out. But just a note that with the rivers being super low, sometimes you get access to places where you haven't been. And if you see something like this, even if you don't think it's mile-a-minute vine, take a photo, and either the state or the town will be super happy to say yes or no, that's mile-a-minute vine, and then someone can go and do something about it.
Kirsten, did they say whether they were going to go take it out?
They didn't. I mean, I presumed that they would. The patch by the upstream remediation area is pretty large, so you would need.
If we had 4 people, could we get out in a couple hours?
Yeah, you'd need a whole bunch of garbage bins. I could forward you the guy's name. We could probably ask him if they did anything.
And if they didn't, it might be a nice small project that we could do. We'll have masks in a week.
Okay. And I think that was the last slide. So I had a very low-key kind of fishing summer. I was happy just to kind of go in the woods now and then. And hopefully that's going to change now that, the weather's changing, and hopefully less people are going to be fishing.
Thank you.
Good point.
Thanks,
All right.
Kirsten.
Great job.
Good job.
So we're going to move on to Bob Milner's excellent adventure. And Bob, do you have your audio figured out there?
Can you hear me
Yep.
Yeah.
and see me? I can't get a gallery. I just have 4 pictures of guys on the bottom, but I can't get the whole screen.
There's 19 more of us here. So I'm going to go ahead and go through, and you can just talk to these slides.
All right, that'll be great. All right, well, if that's the first slide, I'm sure everybody fished much less, but in March, I don't think I fished at all because the virus was really coming on strong and everybody was afraid to even, I couldn't go with anybody else, didn't want to have anybody else in the car. And when I did go, I think I might have gone late March, and I went to the Farmington, and I went early and caught fish. That wasn't the Farmington, but I'll get into that. I caught fish, and then I went and had a bite to eat, and I came back, and it was probably April because it was around the Hendrickson hatch. I couldn't even get into a spot in the river where I wanted to. There were so many people fishing. I don't know if you guys ran into that, but it was crowded. So after I saw that, I decided I would fish when I can. I always like to fish during the week. I'm retired. Didn't matter. There was people fishing all the time. Nobody was working. So on the when I did get up to the Farmington and I had it fairly to myself, I did buy a Thomas and Thomas rod, and I had a decent fish on and I broke it. Well, not my fault. I had the fish above me. I was trying to bring it back into the net, leading it into the net, and I hear this crack, and I didn't even know what the noise was until the top of my rod fell off. And then,
Worst.
yeah, and then the second hook, the dropper got caught on the net, and the fish didn't go in the net, and he broke off. So to add insult to injury, I lost the fish and broke the rod. And then it took, I think I mentioned, it took 6 weeks to get the rod back from Thomas and Thomas because they said they were behind with everything. You could go to the next slide.
Yeah, we've got some videos that come popping up here.
Oh,
So,
if you got a video, yeah, I don't know if the videos will show up. What I did was I was making so many flies like everybody else. I don't even fish streamers except for smallmouths. And I made some chubby Chernobyls, and I made a crawfish type of streamer. And for my grandkids, if this comes out with the sound,
Here.
I was, see if it works.
No, of course not.
No,
Nice brown.
yeah, that was a
Nice.
good brown. But on the streamers that I made a little skit with them, and I put my voice and disguised it for the grandkids, and I had the flies talking to each other. And
I'm going to try that again.
That's a sure sign of a pandemic.
it is, and the one on the left was
There we go.
saying, "Oh, is it working?" Well, I don't know. I couldn't hear it too well, but he says, "Hey, Chubb, you want to go down the corner and see if we could check out some chicks?" And then Chubb says, "Sure, I'll do that." I even had my wife do another one with a couple girl flies, but I don't have that one on here. Anyway, that's how, when you're stuck in the house and you have nothing to do, your imagination goes wild.
All right, then we'll get on to the Housatonic. There we go.
Yeah, then the Housatonic. When the Housatonic dropped, I was able to go up there and I caught some decent fish in the spring, that brown. And there's another video where I had a nice fish on. I don't know if this has ever happened to you guys, but I fell in. And my waders, I know it has happened to everybody. My waders started filling up, but I held the rod and I was kind of thinking I lost that fish. And then I was surprised that he was still on, even with a barbless hook. So as I'm playing him, the same thing happens. I'm trying to get him in the net. I don't know if the other hook got caught on the net, but he broke off too. So it added insult to injury. Do I have that video with me describing as I stand on a rock, Mark?
No, that one. I have the video of your brother.
Oh, no, that's my son.
Your son.
But,
Excuse me. your
yeah,
son.
I had one where I was standing on a rock and I sent it on Instagram to my kids and showed them where I was trying to dry out and emptying the water out of my waders. And it just, again, just another thing that happens while you're fishing. I seem to be tripping up and falling in a little more than I used to. Well, anyway, before I went back to the Housatonic in the fall, I did go up to the Delaware and I saw John Hildenbrand float by me. Do you remember that, John?
I do. I remember you caught a fish right in front of us, and I said, "Man, that guy knows what he's doing." Hey, wait a second, that's
right.
Bob.
Yeah, I didn't recognize you guys until you were ready to leave and go down the river. But that's a steep spot to walk down on that side where I was. It has a rope that you hold on to. Well, little did I know at that time that, I had a pain in my back, and that was still, I don't know, middle of the afternoon maybe, but I fished until dark that day. And when I got back to where I was staying, I started getting a pain in my back in my kidney area. And I thought for sure I was having a kidney stone attack, even though I never had one before. But the pain was severe. So I stayed there that night. I got up the next morning, took a couple pills, and I fished again. I stayed in the river. I caught a few small fish, and then the pain was just getting intense. And that was a Thursday. I was supposed to stay until Friday. I got back to the hotel room and I couldn't even get back to where I said, I'm going to go get some cranberry juice or something for, that's going to help me with a kidney stone. I couldn't even do that. I decided I had to come home because I said, I'm going to wind up in the emergency room. Well, when I got home, I was in pain all the way home. And then it subsided a little bit as I got closer to New Fairfield. I said to my wife, it was like 9 o'clock at night. I said, I think I have to go, but I'm going to wait and see. So I waited about an hour and I said, nope, this pain is too intense. I went to the emergency room. I stayed there for 3 or 4 hours. They did a CAT scan. They told me, yep, you got a kidney stone, but it went into it went out of your kidney, and now you have to pass it. So they gave me this little filter and said, now pee into this for the next couple of days and catch it. So
Yeah.
I peed into that for 3 days and nothing's happening. And the pain wasn't quite as bad as it was, but it wasn't moving. Just to give you an idea. So I have to make a teleconference call with my urologist. And it was the group, and it was a urologist I didn't usually talk to, but she told me, I don't see any kidney stone in this CAT scan.
Oh, geez.
And I said, well, I was at the emergency room. They're the ones who told me I had it. And she says, no, I think it's muscular. You have to see your primary care provider. So I call him and do another teleconference with him.
Oh, God.
And he is questioning me. And then I said, I have had chronic pain in my back, but I said I was up at the Delaware River and I fished for about 12 hours and I hiked all over the place. And he says, well, that's what it is. He says, you aggravated your existing problem with your back. So he gave me a steroid, and within a week it had cleared up. And I still got I have good insurance, but I still got a bill for the CAT scan, which was totally wrong. So be careful what they tell you when you go to the hospital. Anyway,
Good point.
I felt much better. And then the rest of the time in the August, I don't think I fished much at all. But when when we were allowed to go back to the Housatonic after the 15th, the river was still very low. But I hit a couple spots where I caught so many trout. I mean, I lost count, and I caught double headers. I had double headers on, and sometimes they'd get off, and then other times I would catch them. So after that day, I knew the weather was going to be the same for the next day, and then we were going to have a storm after that. So I called up my son, who's working from home, asked him. I said, "Listen, if you ever can get away, this is a time to do it." He doesn't fish much at all. He doesn't have time. He has 3 kids and 1 on the way. And he said, well, I could get away in the morning. I said, all right, well, meet me at the near the Housatonic Meadows. Meet me up there about 7 o'clock. And I took him, and he cleaned up. I just guided him. And I think this is just one of the fish that he caught. If you could show that slide or that video.
Yeah, let's hope it works.
Okay. Yeah. And we were Euro nymphing the whole time.
It's a decent tug.
Yeah, this was a good fish, but it's kind of herky jerky there.
Bob,
It's
when you
not-
nymph, do you always Euro nymph?
Yeah, I do. I do. In
Mark,
fact, I think I have 4 Euro rods now.
I love duck trout.
Real rainbow.
Yeah, well, when the Thomas and Thomas broke, then I had to get an Echo to the newer one, Echo 2 rod, which is a 10.5-foot rod. And that I like that one better than the Thomas and Thomas, really.
really?
Well, you know what, Dave? They've already are replacing the Thomas Contact with Thomas Contact 2.
Which
And
one did you get? 10 foot 8 inches?
No, I got the 11-foot 3-inch, which I really like. But that's the one that broke. And I complained to the guy who
Tori?
designed.
Oh, Joe.
Yeah, I talked to him personally, and he said, "Oh no, it's not defective." Blah, blah. I said, "Well, where it broke at the ferrule. It didn't break at the tip where it would usually break." But anyway, regardless of that, I said, "Well, how come your ad says that the newer version now, Contact 2, is much stronger?" You know, it makes me think that maybe the first one wasn't as strong as they felt it should be. He said, "Oh no, we're selling as many of those as we have." But I noticed right away, those other ones, the Contact regular was discounted.
Yeah, but I mean, everybody's been fishing that rod. It's been the best rod out there from what I think.
All right. Well, I took your word for it, so I have no complaints. I caught
That's
a lot.
What he fishes. That's what Tori Collins fishes. That's what anybody who can afford a $900 rod.
Yeah. Listen, I really splurged. I don't say that so loud. I don't want my wife to hear it.
Oh yeah, sorry, $90 rod.
But that was about it. So we did good in the Housatonic, and then I went up a couple weeks ago after the rain, and the fish are still there. They're still real active and doing. You can do real well there about now if you're nymphing.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
All right, truly an excellent adventure. So
yeah, glad you're feeling better, Bob.
And a fishing
injury. Thank you. Yeah, that was important. Thanks.
Hey, so before I go ahead with my little bit here, I wanted to welcome Paul Kelly. He joined us late. He is actually one of our new members that joined just this past month. So welcome, Paul, to the group.
Welcome, Paul.
Welcome, Paul.
Hey.
Woo! And this is this is you're welcome to our virtual chapter meeting. Now you get to hear about what I'm calling the TU's next generation, and that happens to be my grandson Caden. So so Caden is 8, and he is in 3rd grade. He goes to Brookfield Huckleberry Hill, and he's on the hybrid remote 3 days a week and at school 2 days a week. So he's remote Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and he actually sits right over here in the corner. That's his little corner. I'm in my corner. I think he's in an art class when I took this picture. But his mom, my daughter-in-law, works at the center school in Brookfield. So she is also on what is it, on remote learning and or distance learning. So she didn't want him at home. So I got drafted as the distance learning coach, and my wife is also a tutor at as I mentioned, I think before the call, at Broadview, yeah, and Brookfield Broadview. Anyway, she's also working, so we have a whole house full of distance learning and consulting going on in the Macbeth household here. But it dawned on me that he's 8 years old. It's probably time to get him into fishing. And I think what really spurred it was every year, as Steve Argan knows, every year I go on a bass pike float with Bert Willett, the guide who has sponsored, our banquet, and he's become a good friend. He's a good friend of many of us. Excellent guy, by the way, an excellent guide to go pike and bass fishing was on the Housatonic. So since about 2006, I've been going every year, and it was early August, and I called him up. I really wanted to go on a float, and I said, "Hey, is it okay? Can we do that? Can we social distance?" He says, "Sure." He goes, "I wear a mask all the time." He says, "Let's go fishing." So he took me out. I think this was, I don't remember the date. It was early August. The river was low, but I was fly fishing and spin fishing, and I happened to get into the biggest damn freaking.
Nice.
This is the biggest animal I've ever caught. It was
I love it.
one of the scariest fish I've ever seen.
I love it.
It was heavy. I have a torn rotator cuff. It was really hard to pick that thing up. But it's a personal best. And the rod you see in the background, it's not a fly rod, but it is the spinning rod that I built. And I credit to Mr. Hildenbrand for his tutoring us all on how to build fishing rods. So that was one of the first fish I caught on that spin rod, and it was really kind of fun. Anyway, talking to Bert in the boat that day, I was like, I'd really like to bring my grandson out here. I'd like to bring my son, but he goes, "Well, bring them both." And I said, "Really?" I said, 3 people, 3 people plus you in the boat. He goes, "Yeah, he's 8 years old. He can sit up in the front with you." I said, "Okay." So I made arrangements, and on August 30th, we went. Well, actually, I made arrangements for the float on August 30th, but in the meantime, I had 2 weeks to get him ready. So I took him out with my spinning rod, and we went to a local pond, and I just taught him how to cast, and he took to it right away. He's a very, very, I think he's a good student. And I'm not saying I'm a good teacher. He's a good student. He figured it out, and he was casting really, really well in no time. So I did that a couple of times, and then we went up to the Housatonic, and this is at the abutments pool. We crawled down the ledge there. That was quite funny, watching the 8-year-old lead his 65-year-old grandfather down the rocky embankment into the abutments pool. But we made it, and we climbed out on this rock, and we made a few casts. I hooked a few fish, let him land them, and then he made the cast, the retrieve, the hook set, played the fish. I landed it for him. That was his first ever smallie that he caught on his own.
Mhm.
And he was overjoyed with the thing. And now, then it was like, when are we going fishing? When are we going fishing? When are we going fishing? So on August 30th, we went with Bert, and that's my son Dylan, and we caught countless smallmouth. I mean, I'd like to say it was like, oh, it was 30, it was 32, it was 30. I have no idea. I would say my son probably got 20 fish. Caden and I each, were approaching 10. And he, at the very end of the float, we were in a pool that was just loaded with fish, and we were catching doubles, and he was catching fish, and that smile never left his face. So he's hooked, and he'll be 9 next year, and I've got plenty of fly rods that he can use. So we'll dump him in some waders that are 4 times too big for him, and we'll take him out to the Putatuck, and hopefully we can catch a fish on a fly rod. So that was I consider him to be the next generation of TU. And there was something else that Caden learned on his first ever float trip down the Housatonic. And that is that fishing is hard work. That picture was taken about 10 minutes after Dylan headed south towards Brookfield. he had enough. So that's it. That's it for that. Now I'm going to pass it over to, I think, John Hildenbrand. You want to take over, and I'll stop sharing, and you can share.
Sure. So I thought I'd just speak for just a couple of minutes about some of the just the special fish that I was able to get into with some special people this year. So let me just key this up here.
Oh yeah.
Actually, I'm going to stop that for a moment because I want to enable I have some videos I'll show you at the end, so I want to make sure you can hear those. So I also had an interesting work schedule in the spring. And when we first went on distance learning, I thought I was going to have all kinds of time to fish, and that was not the case at all. I had the most flexible schedule ever, but I just never found time to fish. I was just so busy with school. But I did get out a couple times on the Farmington. In fact, this picture, this was a very special day for me. I'll remember this day forever. This is the picture that's been on the CVTU homepage that Mark put on there. And Mark was there that day. And we were fishing up above Ovation in a small slot we've never fished before. And I fished this slot for probably 20 minutes. I think I caught like an 18-inch brown, and I was feeling all good about myself. And I fished it hard. And I said, okay, I'm going on to the next pool. I fished it out. There's no more fish in here. Evan comes through 5 minutes later, catches this right out from the same hole.
Wow.
We didn't measure that fish, but it had to be all 24 inches. It was a pretty big fish. He was extremely happy. And that's the fly he caught it on. My photographing skills are not great. I know Dave Sherwicky's probably laughing right now. It's a little out of focus, but that's that's Evan's favorite fly. It's a little squirrel jig nymph with a little purple tail, and he catches so many fish on that thing. And that's what that thing took.
Cool.
And then he proceeded to catch I think a 16-inch or 17-inch fish 5 minutes after that one. I finally realized, you know, he's made it. You know, he went behind me. I thought I did a good job, and he cleaned up behind me. It was pretty humbling, to be honest with you. And then, so then, as we went through the summer, did a camping trip with Mike Fatsy. We took our campers over to Farmington River, and as several of you alluded to, the river was insanely crowded. It was insane how many people were on that river. Little discouraging actually, but we did some fishing behind the campground, and my daughter got that nice rainbow trout. She was extremely happy about it. That was one of my hopes for the summer, was that she was able to get into fly fishing a little bit, and she had a great time fishing all by herself. She likes to get set up and just want me to leave her alone and do it by herself, and she got that rainbow, which I was that was a good day. And then once, what was that, Mike? Like probably early July, right?
It was second week of July we were there.
Yeah.
Sunday through Tuesday, I think it was.
Yeah.
It was Saturday through Tuesday.
If you're familiar with that campground, typically during the week in the summer, we have gone for the past few years. There's out of 40 campsites, there might be 3 or 4 occupied during the week. And when we went there, every single campsite was full. Every single campsite. Yeah, I've never seen anything like it. It was, yeah, it was a little discouraging. So that was it. Once middle of July came, we pretty much were done trout fishing. Just I think Kristen said it. A couple other people said I can't take the crowds. You would walk far away from the parking areas. There'd still be people. So I really haven't trout fished since then. And then I just did saltwater fishing. I had my daughter out again. I actually got my high school age daughter up at like 3 a.m. to go striper fishing, which was huge.
She never went to sleep, John.
Actually, that's actually true. You have experience with it. And so that was we had some great days together, and I'm really that made my summer that she's getting into it as much as Evan is. And most of you know Evan. Evan was with me all summer. I did a lot of trips out to Block Island. Had a lot of, these are some of the fish. I did a lot of night fishing, but those pictures don't come out too well because it's pitch black. So these are the fish that were either right before dark or at like 4 a.m. But we were leaving Newtown at about midnight.
Some good Photoshop there.
I learned from the best, Dave. But these are just some of the pictures that I just happen to like just because of the lighting on it. The picture on the top right is a very special picture to me. This is my friend Walt, who I taught with for a number of years. He's actually a retired Navy veteran who was on submarines for a number of years. And I think I've fished with this guy every year for at least the past 20 years. And he just had a great time. This particular day, you see it laid down. The stripers, as I think Dave Surwicki said earlier, roll like tarpon. And these giant stripers were sipping on the surface like they were eating dry flies. and they were all around the boat. It was just an amazing day. And this guy Walt had the greatest time ever. And it was just great to put him on some fish because I don't get to fish with him that often. He doesn't get out much. And that was a special day. You recognize the guy in the bottom right. That's our good friend, Dave Shaw. And that fish was probably a little smaller, but look at the sky. What an amazing morning that was. I just took that picture because of the sky. That was beautiful. And then as August came, a number of people on this Zoom right now know exactly what I'm talking about because they've been here. But the Rhode Island beaches just lit up since August. The anchovies came in, and if you don't know what an anchovy is, there's a picture here on the left. It's a tiny little bait fish, maybe an inch long, and you have to use these tiny little flies. But here you are in the Atlantic Ocean, casting to some big fish with these tiny, tiny little flies. In fact, trout femurs are actually bigger than these. And if you have a fly more than 2 inches long, you really won't catch anything. You have to really dial in. So this is a video I'll show you. This is Eric Nadabon. This was a couple of weeks ago, right off of Charlestown Breachway, if you know where that is, up in Westerly, Rhode Island. And we came into acres of stripers. And so I took this video. One of my goals this year was to take more pictures. I never take enough pictures. So I had to just like get the restraint to stop and take a video or stop and take pictures. So I'm really glad I've done that over the year. But I'll show you this. You'll note the fish in front of the boat. There's hundreds of stripers blitzing all around us. And you'll note, watch his strip set. That's exactly what you want to do with striped bass or pike or any big fish.
Oh, yeah.
Now I'll play that again. Watch the fish in front of the boat. Look at all the fish blitzing there.
Oh, yeah. Dave, come up here. Get this rod.
Hang on a minute. And if you know Eric, he's one of the nicest guys in the world. He hadn't even landed the fish yet. And you hear what he's saying? Hey, someone else come up here and take this spot. So it was kind of a joy as we flipped around the boat, letting everyone try to take a shot at these fish. And then I'm going to show you one other blitz. And Mike Fatsy was with me this day. We were out at Watch Hill, and this is something you really don't see that much. I haven't seen this like this in, I don't even know, years. And there's a species called the chub mackerel. They're about a pound, and they swim extremely fast. And we came upon these blitzes, and Mike, what did we got up at what, midnight we met at Newtown?
Yeah, midnight.
I told my wife that we'd be home at 3 o'clock, and this is what, 4:30 in the afternoon.
He had to beg me to stop casting. He said, "Really? Can we go home now?"
It was one heck of a long day, and I'll show you this video as well, and you'll notice the enthusiasm in our voices.
Oh, here they come.
And these are very violent blitzes.
Oh my gosh.
And if you listen in the background, you can actually hear the drag screaming a little bit because you just cast into there, and it's like it's a guaranteed hookup. And you know, I don't care how late you've been up, but the adrenaline right now on this, you were pumped. That was a great day. I'll show you this again. I just can't stop.
Oh, here they come.
Who's that girl in the background making that noise?
Oh my gosh.
Screaming like a schoolgirl.
Yeah, it was a good way to pass the time this summer. And I had a great time with one of the things I've learned over the years is the people who you go with, and we've had a lot of good memories this summer. So thanks guys for everything. Had a great summer.
Nice job, John.
Who's next? John Forlenzo?
All right, let me share my screen here. Let's see. Boom, should be that one. Good. So sounds like a lot of people had a lot of different activities to try to keep themselves sane during this insane time. And I'd say this summer I did more fishing than I have in the past 20 years. So it started, actually, I've caught, and Mike talked about streaks. And so I've caught a fish every month this year. And so my goal is to catch fish in November and December, and then my first time in my lifetime that I'll have caught a fish in every month of the year. And I think I can do that pretty easily. But I did a lot of trout fishing earlier, probably till about the end of May. My professor, Paul Ingracia, and I would meet at the river and in our own cars, and he would socially distant school me on how to catch the trout. So I appreciate all Paul's patience during the springtime. And but my real passion is saltwater fishing. I was born on Long Island Sound. I just can't ever get away from Long Island Sound. So one area that I like to fish a lot, it's probably one of my most favorite places on Long Island Sound, is Middle Ground Stratford Shoal. So when you look here, there's the lighthouse out on Middle Ground. It's literally in the middle of Long Island Sound, halfway between Bridgeport and Port Jeff. And over on the right side here, you can see I'm not too accurate with my handwriting on the exact spots that I like to fish. But you know, what I have here is the map, the sounding map of Middle Ground. So you can see it's really deep on the west side, 71 feet, and it goes up to 13 feet. And it just goes up and down and all around. And couple of the lines I have on there, the two blue lines are two of my favorite drifts. So I find can 3 and I drift by can 3 and I go over the end of that little hump there. And then also on the south side of the lighthouse, that's a great fall drift for stripers and bluefish. And then what you see on this green line here is that's where the rip sets up, and the rip is definitely much stronger in the fall than it is during the summertime. And that sounding change from 71 feet coming up to 18 feet all along that strip, and that strip is probably a good mile. Anywhere along there, the birds just killing bait on the topwater action with either stripers or blues.
Is there a standing wave there, John?
There is a standing wave there. Yes. Yes, there is. And it kind of comes and goes with the tide, right? And there's stronger parts of it. And maybe the standing wave moves a little bit, you know, south or north or what have you. So it's not a constant wave in one spot. You got to kind of move with it a little bit during the tide, but there's definitely a wave there. And just give you an idea of all in this one area. So if you take this, I don't know, maybe it's a 2 square mile area, you can catch almost every species under the sun. So I fish right around the lighthouse, and you pull the stripers out of the rocks, and you know, there's black sea bass. I catch those mostly on those drifts, on those east-west drifts is where I catch the black sea bass. I brought Paul out with me one day, and Paul caught his black sea bass and had a nice dinner that night. Nice fluke. I actually catch more fluke when I'm fishing for striped bass than I do when I'm trying to catch fluke. So, you know, you just bouncing soft plastics off the bottom. The paddle tails seem to work the best, but yeah, you'll catch a bunch of stripers, and then boom, you'll catch a fluke in between. And then of course you got your proverbial porgy. This was one of the monsters I caught this year, 15-inch porgy. It was a big fatty, And he was also bouncing. You could see the pink soft plastic off the bottom, basically right around the lighthouse, fishing for stripers. And you never know what you can get. You catch a fluke, you catch a black sea bass, you catch a striper, you catch a porgy. So you never know what you're going to get. So it makes it kind of interesting when you feel the pull on the rod and you're like, okay, that's not the same as it was before. What could it be? And then the bluefish, I'd say the blue fishing and middle ground is probably the best that I've seen it in 10 years. It's just unbelievable. They're back and forth. It's really good to see. This picture is about 3 weeks old. That was 2 fish. My neighbors asked me if I can bring them a bluefish home. So I bring my neighbors a bluefish here and there when they ask me for one. And that fish was probably the bottom one there. That was close to a 10-pounder. That was about a 32-inch fish.
Wow.
And the other one above it, all good fighters, all good fights. And I didn't catch this at middle ground, but I had never in my life caught a weak fish before. So I don't know how many people are familiar with the weak fish. I actually caught this in front of Penfield Beach during the summertime. So I went out fishing one morning. On the way in, because I launch in Fairfield, stopped for lunch, and I was literally eating a sandwich and just casting my rod out, and I caught this weak fish. So first ever, I was pretty psyched about that. And I'd say all in all, my fishing season certainly isn't over. And but it's been a good summer. It's been a good year for fishing. So
Thank you for clarifying. Thank you for clarifying.
Any questions? All right, cool.
Dave Zerwicki, take it over.
We'll stop.
Absolutely. I share my screen. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I stopped sharing, so you should be good.
Hey, John, do you like incoming or outgoing tide better out there?
Absolutely outgoing tide. No doubt.
Dave's on.
Can you guys see anything?
Yep, I see you.
Can you see my screen?
Now we can.
Yeah, there you go.
Do you see the beach?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Okay, because I can't see you guys now, but so this is the view from my backyard these days. I moved here right before this all started. It was March 10th I moved here, I think. And this is East Haven. I live in East Haven now. And but I was supposed to be going to Europe on March 27th to move to Europe, Prague, but that got locked down. Americans still can't go there. So I've been here ever since, basically. So I haven't trout fished since before March, since February, really, because I live on the beach. So I decided I might as well striper fish. And I was trying to stay away from people and be as safe as possible. But so until maybe September, I was fishing right outside my back door, kind of. Whenever the tide was good, almost every day at times, I would either go left out the door. There's a kind of a big marsh that drains with a nice big outflow, or I would go right and drive down the street about a mile, and where there's like a smaller marsh with a smaller outflow, but with a little bit more open ocean like this shot here. And a lot of my time was just spent like this. I fished on my own almost the entire time, except I did fish with my niece. They came from Pennsylvania. There she's standing in the outflow of this big marsh that comes out, and there are stripers and shad. We caught a lot of shad actually sitting in this current right here. She was on the spinning rod, obviously, but I've been fly fishing the whole. Yeah, I've been fly fishing the whole time. And here, this was my go-to spot for a while. If you follow that rock jetty out, there's a beautiful rip that goes from the right side to the left, right where it's smooth and then it gets rough. I didn't even know what a rip was actually until I started fishing this, and I learned a lot from John and Mike. But I would stand about 30 feet out under that on the submerged jetty there, let the fly drift over the top. Here I'm using a sinking line, a depth charge 9-weight, and beautiful stripers over there. Mostly in May, early June. Then it kind of died off and they got smaller and smaller. As the season went on, the fish got smaller and smaller. But you know, so this is my local. This is, you know, a mile from my house. This one maybe even was with the kayak, which John has lent me so kindly. And so, you know, as the summer got longer, got warmer, you really only fish like at dusk or at dawn, and really only on outgoing tide for me.
I
But it
don't
was
see the
great.
fish, Dave.
I'm fishing by myself. There's literally not a single fish picture in here. I caught a few. Come on.
Showing his landscapes. That's what he's doing.
So it was amazing. It was amazing, really, and some night fishing as well. When you can hear the fish on the surface, and you're fishing like maybe like this 15-foot wide creek, and you're catching, you know, pretty nice like 6-7 pound stripers just off your rod tip. It's unbelievable, you know. It was amazing. But there were a lot of nights standing out there by myself in the dark, just waiting for the fish to show up or not show up. So, but luckily, you know, it's down the street, and there was nothing else to do really. But right at the beginning of September, I started going to Rhode Island, the beaches in Rhode Island, and that was a whole nother game. This is a pretty intimate group, so I'm not going to say exactly where I was fishing, but you guys know, near like just east of Watch Hill, there are these 3 big salt ponds. You know, they're miles wide. And hang on a second. I'll make sure. Oh, here's my cursor. And there are all these. There's 3 breachways. There's a breachway like right there, breachway right there, and over here at Charlestown. That's where John's video was from, when he was catching the fish on the boat. And so all these massive salt ponds behind here drain out and then fill up. And so I've been going there since September 3rd, basically, as much as possible, and fishing, you know, all these like big beaches here. This is Misquamicut State Beach, that you guys probably know over here. And then you can fish East Beach. You can fish back here in the pond, which has been incredible. That's like fishing the flats somewhere in the Bahamas or something like that. So that's been pretty amazing. That completely transformed my striper fishing. Here you can see the satellite view. It's pretty amazing. These big ponds, and the fish, you know, they can be right off the breachways, but a lot of times the bait comes out, I guess, and then they just push them along the beach back and forth. They're kind of like trap them here or here, but they could really go up anywhere.
What kind of setup?
I have a couple of videos. I know the video. Oh, that's a good question. So I'm fishing my 9-foot 9-weight, and I'm fishing this Coastal Quick Shooter XP, which is intermediate line. So it sinks slowly. Here was, say, 1.5 inches per second. You kind of just want it to get under the waves and not too deep below the surface. Because when you're fishing on the beaches, you're almost always fishing to fish that you can see or that have shown themselves a minute ago. And so you know they're in the area. You're not usually just randomly casting because it just feels aimless and a little bit hopeless. So it's shallow, you know, it's not shallow, it's just 3, 4, 5 feet, but the fish are at the top. So I found this is a great line for me. It's clear, the tip is clear, maybe it's like 30 feet of clear, because the water has been pretty darn clear, and sometimes the fish are right there, and I think it helps. XP, extra powerful. It's made for cold water as well, which is what we have. so it doesn't get stiff. So I think some of the warmer lines in the cold water can get stiff, and it gets windy out there too. So you need something that can really punch through the wind. It's hard work sometimes, but yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. Well, let me show you a few pictures of the beach actually while I'm here. So, because part of the reason it's an hour and 15 minutes drive from my house, and I live on the beach, but I go there instead of fishing here because the fishing has been pretty much amazing, and it's beautiful, and there's almost nobody there ever, basically. Right now, I started fishing it just before Labor Day. After Labor Day, you know, there's some fishermen there, but the beaches, I mean, they're gorgeous. You know, it's mostly empty, especially if you walk a little bit away from the parking areas, and you know, that's relatively crowded. There's probably like 8 people there, but that beach is 2 miles long. If you want to see my iPhone chart, this is the last 30 days. Friday, I walked 6.7 miles, and you can tell when I fished by all these other ones, which are, this is 2.5 here. So 5.5 miles, 6 miles. Easy days are like 3.5, blah, blah, blah. So that's 12 days of fishing in the last 30. So I don't go all day, you know, but because the fishing's amazing sometimes. Sometimes you're catching, Mike was there when we had, I don't know, you catch 20, you catch 30 stripers, all like blitzing right in front of you, and they're all
That day we walked 14 miles on my watch. 14 miles.
That's up and down the same beach,
right,
basically.
up and down the same beach, but 14 miles over the course of the day.
But I mean, I don't know. I probably caught 20 or 30 stripers, I think,
Yeah.
and they're all pretty nice fish, and they're in the surf, and you see them coming through the wave and eating your fly from the back, or you're throwing it over the back of the wave and maybe parallel to the shore. And sometimes the stripers are running right along the shore, and you're kind of like swinging into them. It's amazing sometimes.
Something to
How
behold.
far
for
would you
sure.
wade?
You don't wade at all, almost.
Right in the sandy bit.
Mostly you're just like right at the edge, right where the waves are crashing. If they're away, usually there's waves like 2-3 feet. Sometimes they're bigger, but sometimes they're not very big. But this is Dave and Mike. Last week we went, and that was hard fishing. But you know, there were thousands or hundreds of fish out there. They were just a little bit beyond reach, you know. And the most important tool, which I learned, of course, is my binoculars. Once I brought my binoculars out there, my walking distance went down a lot, because that main beach I fish is 2 miles long, and I can see what the birds are doing on either end of the beach. And if they're doing anything, I more or less go that direction, because it means the fish are over there, even if they're not on the surface yet, and they usually will pop up. But once you have the binoculars, it's a lot less just kind of walking back and forth, waiting for something to happen. But it's been pretty amazing. Sometimes the waves are big and the wind is blowing. What's that?
I said a stripping basket is pretty key.
Oh yeah, you need a stripping basket to drop your fly line in, because otherwise it wraps around your feet. It happens anyway, you know, especially because, you know, you're running down the beach. I got all my exercise in these last like 2 months, because you're literally sprinting down the beach sometimes. The fish pop up and you go running to them. I have some videos, but I know the videos don't show very well on Zoom, but these aren't in PowerPoint, so maybe it'll work, but let's see what happens here. That's all fish. Look at that. Those are all big fish too. Those are all like 8-10 pound fish too. And they're at my feet. Watch, when they come close, that's my feet. They're right in front of me. And look, there's nobody there. There's some tourists walking down the beach. No fishermen. How was that video? Could you guys see it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you see, Kirsten, we're right there. I'm right on the edge, and the fish are everywhere.
These are all big fish.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. And you can hear
Right
them
on the beach.
Sometimes you hear them feeding before you see them. That's the same shot. You know, it's literally some of the best fishing days I'll ever have in my life. I think it really can't get any better than that. You know, and for me, there's something special about being in the waves, and also being restricted by the fact that you're wading and that you're fly fishing. You know, and so mostly, well, I've only used unweighted flies there, because the fish are pretty high on the surface, and you've got your intermediate line. So I've been fishing almost exclusively these Enrico Puglisi flies, which I tie. That sort of looks like wet, and these imitate the peanut bunker, which are the really small baby versions of the bunker. And then been fishing these, which imitate the bay anchovies that John was talking about. And these are probably inch and a half, 2 inches long. And that's what I've been fishing for the last few weeks, similar to John's photo. And this is what I was fishing with today. It was the same thing. And it's almost guaranteed, if you put a good cast out there and you have something like this, it's almost guaranteed to get the hookup. It's just a question of being able to get the fly out there and having the fish be around. So it's been pretty amazing. You know, that's it. It's been incredible. You know, if the wind isn't blowing horribly, I go out. And I found the tide doesn't really matter. I can't find a pattern. You know, I've been going out all the time, and falling tide, rising tide, I think there's just so much bait that I've caught so many fish in the middle of the day. It's not a morning or evening thing right now. So, which is great, actually.
How'd you do today, Dave?
I got 4 nice fish. They weren't on the beach. They weren't blitzing. So, and it was windy, but it was, you know, it's a very fulfilling way to fish when you have to go down on these rocks and out in the kind of really precarious spot and put out a long cast when the fish showed up for like a few seconds, and then 2 casts, 2 fish, and then another spot where you're waiting out on the beach, and it was near this. These are the one of the breachways. To the left of this breachway, there's a beach. It's a really shallow beach, so you can walk out far, but the waves kind of crash right at your chest. So you're kind of like getting knocked back and trying to cast. And I got a beautiful fish out there too. So, and the water is crystal clear usually too. So,
do you tie your line directly to the hook, or do you have any like, what is like a bite guard or wire or anything?
No, you don't need it. Stripers really don't have. So you don't need it. I'm fishing 15-pound fluorocarbon off of I think I have a pike leader or a striper leader, just something to help you turn it over. Because I was just tying my own leaders with like 40-pound 25-20, but I actually had a couple commercial ones sitting around, and I set that up, and then it turns over better. No, so 15-pound. If they get really picky, I go to 12, but that's it. It's pretty simple, you know. I have not changed my fly pattern in probably the last 10 times I've been out there. Probably not. Maybe once a day I change the fly, because you don't need to. And you only lose flies on a really big fish, or if you're not, wasn't that great usually. So, I mean, I check it after you catch a lot. Just make, you know, they can abrade the line, but it's the equipment you need once you have it. You know, it's pretty basic. I go out with the sling pack, and in the sling pack are two of my saltwater boxes, and binoculars and water, and that's it, you know. And I just started wearing waders last week. I've been wet wading the whole time because the water's still pretty warm, but the air gets cold now, so you get a little bit chilly when you get soaked. But and it's a beautiful spot, you know. It's a beautiful part of Rhode Island, and it's kind of like feels a little bit old-fashioned, a little bit abandoned, especially out of season, and it's quiet. It's great. It's really great, you know. So.
And then afterwards, do you rinse all your gear?
Yeah. I was doing it every single day when I was fishing here because I was getting really wet here all the time. Sometimes I would have to swim to my spot because I couldn't wade that far because it would go over my waders. Or I started wet wading. I was wearing bathing suit. But yeah, then I would definitely clean it every day, but at least every other time I fish for sure. I clean my line almost every time, especially now because when you're on the beach, you need longer casts. And you're casting into the wind a lot of the times, or you're crossed wind. So a lot of times you're casting backhand. And it really helps if your line is clean. So I clean my line all the time. I just started wearing boots again, wading boots, because I've got the BOA, which has the wire, the metal, so I keep that clean. And my reels, my God, my reels they're lamps and grooves, and they have seal drag, but after a while, I took it apart and there was salt just caked in there, and I had to literally really scrape it hard to get the salt out. Yeah, the salt water destroys stuff. So I broke 2 fly rods this summer as well. So it's really hard on your gear, but it's been amazing. It's been great. So.
I think the common theme this year is there's been lots and lots of bait, lots and lots of small bait. And I agree with you 100%. If your bait's if your fly's a little too big, or even your soft plastic, whatever you're using, if it's too big, you don't get any bites. You go small, you get bites all day. That's been the theme.
I had outside my window over here, there've been schools of big bunker probably for 2 months. But I haven't seen a single fish attack them. So
nothing's touching the big schools. Nothing.
Yeah. And you know, those fish are, I don't know, they're 12, 14. I don't know. They're pretty big. I was stalking them for a while in the kayak, just waiting for something to eat them, but nothing has shown up yet. So, you know, for a while.
I had a school of bunker in front of my boat last weekend that was so big I thought it was a rock.
Yeah. When it's calm, I can look out here, and there can be acres of it out there. It's pretty amazing sometimes. So, yeah. So it's been great. I might start trout fishing. I don't know. The Housatonic's looking really tempting right now, but I've been striper. It's been amazing. The striper fishing's been so much fun, and they're big fish. You know, just the fact that you're battling like a 8-10 pound fish in the surf. It's just different than a 10-inch trout or a 12-inch trout. But so it's been great. It's been great.
All right. That's all she wrote.
All right.
Some good stories.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Intimate group of friends here, mostly, right?
Yeah. Thank you, everybody who participated, and thank you, everybody who tuned in.
And I actually recorded this, so I'll put it up on the YouTube channel.
Cool.
All right.
Great.
Awesome. Thanks.
Well,
All right.
tight lines, everybody. Be well, stay safe, wear your mask.
Hey guys.
Mike.
Thanks, guys. Good night.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. It was very,
Hey,
very good.
guys. Good night.
Thank you.
Yeah, see you, Emery.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.